Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We're in Judges chapter 9. We're going to be starting in verse 6 this lesson. But before we begin, Jeremiah 15:16, Thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, last lesson we finished with Abimelech kills the 70 sons of Gideon on one rock. Probably he's there watching the whole thing take place. Maybe not. But it says that Abimelech killed them. So I don't know that he actually, was the one that did the killing, or if he was there to watch it. For sure, he had it done for sure. But anyways, God in his mercy and in his grace spares one son, and that's Jotham, and his name means God is upright. And God is going to use Jotham here, and we're going to see that in another verse or two. Let's read verse 6. And it says here, And all the men of Shechem gathered together in all the house of Millo, and they went and they made Abimelech king by the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem. Now, Abimelech is crowned as king, and he is officially the first Israelite to ever hold that position. But it was only the men of Shechem and Millo that made him king. Basically, Abimelech reigned over only the western part of Manasseh's territory. In verse 22, it says that he reigned over Israel. But this does not mean that he reigned over the rest of the tribes, or that the other tribes submitted to him as their king. The other tribes probably saw Abimelech as a governor, but not really as a king. He probably did not have a lot of influence over the other tribes. Did Abimelech take an oath of office in the name of the Lord? Probably not. But if he did, it was blasphemy against God, because God never chose him to attain this position. And if he made any oaths to the people during his coronation, they were all given in deception, because he was going to do what he wanted to do anyways. It's just like a politician. They want a position in the government, and they make all kinds of promises. But here, if he did make any oaths or promises of what he was going to do, he was lying to them, because he had his own agenda and he was going to do it anyways. Now it says here, in the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem. Now this is even more blasphemy on Abimelech's part, and also on the people's part. It was at this very place. Listen to this. This is interesting. Where they are crowning him as king, it's the very place where in Genesis chapter 12 and verse 6 that God promised Abraham to give him and his descendants the land. And it was also near this place that the children of Israel heard the blessings and the cursings being read from the law of Moses. And the children of Israel promised to obey God's law. We see that in Deuteronomy 11, verses 26 to 32, and Joshua 8, verses 30 to 35. This is where Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal was. On that mount, the blessings and the cursings were pronounced, And the children of Israel said, we will do them. Well, in this very place, they're not doing them. And it was at this place, same place, where Jacob buried the idols of his family, and he called them to serve the Lord. We see that in Genesis 35, verses 1 through 5. And it was here that Joshua gave his last speech before his death and led the children of Israel to reaffirm their obedience to the Lord. That's seen in Joshua 24, verses 25 and 26. So here, this is ultimate blasphemy by Abimelech and by the children by the people of Shechem and Millo to do this at this place. All of this was sacred history with the children of Israel. And Abimelech and these people, basically, they spit in God's face and they reject all that God had promised them, all that they had promised to do for God too. All of this came about because what? Because of one man's sinful selfishness. So here the children of Israel, I shouldn't say all of them, it's just Shechem and Millo and Abimelech. They are basically spitting in the face of God at basically the very site where all of these things took place, where God promised to bless Israel and where the children of Israel promised to bless God and be faithful to him. Now, right there at that very site, they're rejecting God and they're setting up a wicked, sinful king to reign right there, right before the face of God. They're doing this. Now, in verses 7 through 21, I'm not going to read all of these verses, but it's about the parable of Jotham. The parable of Jotham. Now, this parable, you can read, when you have time, you can read this parable. This parable is a rebuke to both Abimelech and to the men of Shechem and Millo. Jotham hears what Abimelech did to his brothers, and he goes directly to Mount Gerizim. Now, Mount Gerizim was the Mount of Blessing, and it was also the mount that the family of Joseph, which was Manasseh and Ephraim, Joseph's family was to stand on Mount Gerizim. If you remember, you can read in Joshua 8, verses 30 to 35. Well, where six tribes went to Mount Gerizim and 6 tribes went to Mount Ebal. And they were to, actually it wasn't the whole tribes, it was more or less the representatives of the tribes were to go. And the ark was to be in the middle. In the middle was in Shechem. And they were to pronounce the blessings and the cursings. And this is now, and it was on Mount Gerizim that Joseph's descendants were to go to Mount Gerizim. So now Jotham, who is a descendant of Joseph, he goes to Mount Gerizim to pronounce this, his parable. In Jotham's parable, the trees are looking for a king to reign over them. But there was no real reason why they should look for a king. All the trees already belong to God, and they are in his care, just as Israel was God's people that he promised to take care of. It is possible that Jotham did not know the full story of how Abimelech's pursuit to be king over Israel began. Jotham's parable starts with the trees looking for a king. The trees represent Shechem and Millo. But Shechem and Millo did not first desire for a king to rule over them. It started with Abimelech, who then he went to Shechem to support him in becoming the king. Now, if Jotham knew that it had started with Abimelech, then probably Jotham's parable would have started out differently. Jotham climbs up Mount Gerizim, and he begins to shout out his parable, which will be carried down into the valley. After he spoke this parable, he was able to escape. And now, it is not known if the people of Shechem did pursue after Jotham, or if they were convicted in their hearts by this parable, and they did not want to be guilty of Jotham's blood also. Again, we don't know how it transpired that he was able to escape, but he was. And now he goes and he hides. I want us to look at a different aspect of Jotham's parable. It's a little bit different than what you will find with most scholars. Now, yes, the olive tree and the fig tree and the vine trees, they were very important and they were valuable to the Jews. And they are also today, they are valuable trees to the nation of Israel. You will find, if you study this and you look up scholars, you will find no lack of teachers giving you typology as to what these three trees mean in the parable. And yes, these three trees, they did refuse to become king over the other trees. Because why? Why did they refuse to become king over the other trees? It's because they put God first, and they were completely content in fulfilling the purpose that God had made them to be. So here you have these trees looking for a king, and you have the fig tree, the olive tree, and the vine, and they're asked to be king. And no, we were very satisfied with doing what God had prepared us to do, what God had created us to do. We're very satisfied with what we're doing, and God is blessed. We are blessed, and we don't need to be king over anybody. But from the olive tree to the fig tree down to the vine tree, the progression of the size of these trees goes down until they end up with the lowest, which is the bramble bush. That's what I want to look at. One aspect of this parable that you probably won't find is the progression of the height of these trees going downward. Each time that the trees are refused, they go lower to seek a king. Their pursuit of a king ends with them having to ask a basically good-for-nothing, scraggly old bramble bush. Oh, how these mighty cedar trees and oak trees had to humble themselves to ask a bramble bush to rule over them. God had made Israel a mighty nation of trees, and they didn't need to have Abimelech reigning over them. Because Abimelech is willingly removing God as king over Israel, then as bramble bushes can self-ignite because of the heat and friction, God will cause Abimelech to be like a tree to the forest, and God will cause the people of Shechem and Millo to be like a fire to Abimelech. Yeah, God is going to judge both. He's going to use each one against each other. Because of the murder of Gideon's sons, God is going to judge them all by using them against each other. Although the people of Shechem and Millo are worshiping Baal Bereth, this judgment that God is bringing upon them and Abimelech is not about it's not about their idol worship, but it's all about the murders of Gideon's 70 sons. You can read that in Judges chapter 9, verse 56. We're going to get when we get there. But understand, the judgment that God is going to bring against Abimelech and the people of Shechem and Millo has nothing to do with idolatry. This is all about God judging them for what they did to Gideon's 70 sons. And that's what this is about. The other oppressions that the children of Israel experienced with Mesopotamia, with Moab, with the Midianites, that had to do because of their idolatry. This isn't. This is different. This is a different judgment. That God, and this judgment is not really coming against the whole nation of Israel. It's coming against Abimelech and Shechem and Millo. All right, we're going to continue on in verse 22 next lesson. But until then, walk with the Lord. I know he walks with you.